Welcome back to the Makers of MidCity podcast. Today we sit down with Olivia Christian, the marketing director for TVG Hospitality, operators of the Orion Amphitheater.
And I'm Nadia Niakasari, the director of development for RCP Companies.
Olivia, thank you so much for being here today. Would you like to introduce yourself and kind of give us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. First off, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. Like you said, I'm marketing director for TVG Hospitality. We operate the Orion Amphitheater as well as Saturn in Birmingham, Alabama. There's a couple of additional venues, restaurants, bars in London, UK. I was born and raised here in Huntsville, moved up to Nashville to go to school at Belmont University and stuck around there, got some great opportunities. I started out as an intern for the Ryman Auditorium, kind of moved on from there, worked for festivals, worked for a great PR firm, worked for a couple of venues, which really introduced me more into the venue side of things, War Memorial Auditorium and Tennessee Performing Arts Center. And then I was with a promoter for about 5 years, an independent promoter, NS2, National Shows 2, where I got to work on everything from Wu-Tang Clan to Bob Dylan, Metallica, Ghost, Luke Combs, just every genre all over the country. So some really exciting stuff there. And then I heard about this new amphitheater that they were building in my hometown and decided I really needed to be a part of that. So here I am almost 3 years later.
Yeah. And so, I mean, how like your background, obviously working in all those different areas, working for all these huge venues and bands and everything is incredible. And then you see this venue coming to your hometown that is kind of, I mean, growing up here, I mean, you probably didn't think Huntsville was the coolest place. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, we're all Huntsville natives.
Yeah.
I've never left. Y'all actually got out, but I've enjoyed being here. So, but like you see this amphitheater coming, were you kind of in shock that were you still keeping up with what Huntsville was doing and kind of the growth it was having, and this amphitheater and this opportunity to work for them was like a perfect fit for you?
Absolutely. With Mars Music Hall had just started in full force. And I was really starting to keep up with, Huntsville's investing in more spaces for music. Obviously, Von Braun Center, I'd been to plenty of concerts. I remember, I think, a 16th birthday at a John Mayer show. Okay. So plenty of great concerts there. But I just kept my eye on the horizon because I knew that with the growth Huntsville was experiencing, that they'd be investing in entertainment in some form. I did not think that they would be investing in something so world class. I didn't think that they would be considering all aspects when planning for a music venue, especially of that size. So I was a bit surprised, but then I started really finding out who was behind these decisions and who they were bringing in to make them, and learned more about MidCity and what RCP was doing, and was totally enamored and fully intrigued. If for no other reason, I just hadn't heard of things being done that way before. So while I was following Huntsville, I was especially following this project once I started hearing about it. And it just sounded like I had to put my money where my mouth was, where I said, there has to be more entertainment. If the city's going to continue growing, they've got to invest, and I have to be a part of that.
Yeah, and so what was it like? So did you join onto the TVG Hospitality's team right at the beginning of like the construction happening, or what was your time frame as far as, hey, there's this proposed amphitheater coming to Huntsville, you see it, you're like, I want to be a part of it somehow. When did you first come on board, and what was that initial marketing like to, draw people's interest and make sure people were aware of what's happening?
Yeah, I think I was maybe the third employee. I saw a great article about Ryan Murphy, who had come from St. Augustine Amphitheater and other projects. And I decided that I just needed to go tell him that he absolutely needed a marketer who both knew Huntsville very well, but also knew the music industry and had seen a lot of things that were great and that should be done at a venue, but seen a lot of things that just didn't necessarily work anymore and wanted to change the model. And I think it was an AL.com article, probably Matt Wake, and talking about Ryan's vision and TVG's vision for this. And so when I knocked on Ryan's office door essentially and had a conversation, I pitched the idea that and he had already laid such a foundation for this that he couldn't do this without the support of Huntsville. There's no doing this and leaving Huntsville behind. There's no doing this and hoping that people join your cause. It's really getting out there from day one and saying, rising tide raises all ships. How are we all working together to make sure that this amphitheater is not only successful, but welcoming to this community? The community feels that it's, just an extension of what they're already doing and a place for them to do it. So part of when I convinced them that they needed to hire me, I was brought on, and it was a daunting task to really build from the ground up. My previous boss at NS2 had told me that opening a venue was going to be probably the hardest thing I had ever done. But the challenge was so interesting to me, and building that first marketing plan of just, you don't have any materials. You don't have
a playbook.
Yeah. There's no playbook. Exactly. And honestly, if there was a playbook that somebody else had written, it wouldn't have worked for Huntsville, and it wouldn't have worked for what TVG and what the Orion and what Ryan and this, kind of skeleton crew were putting together. So it was a lot of taking what I knew from my experience at venues and with artists and applying it just like everybody else on our team was doing. Things that we'd seen that we liked and things that we didn't, and finding the best marketing mix, not only in Huntsville, but setting the stage to do that nationally, to get those recognitions early on, so that we knew that we could that this would be something sustainable and something that we could, continue for years and years, winning those awards and drawing people in, so that we've got Huntsville in our backyard and we're the luckiest to be here, but we also want people from all over the globe to come experience it, the amphitheater and Huntsville.
Oh yeah. And I think what's interesting is, like, you've had a huge career in marketing and you've gone into these bigger cities. Was there a unique thing that you thought, you've seen it work in these other cities and you maybe tried it for Huntsville, and the Huntsville community, the Huntsville market wasn't as receptive, maybe as the work maybe you were doing in Nashville at the Ryman or anything else?
It's funny that you say that. What I will say about that is how quickly people are in other markets to put Facebook on the back burner and say that's not really something that we are growing. That's not something we're putting a lot of time or effort in. And this is a huge Facebook market. Yeah. It surprises me every single time. I keep thinking that we're getting away from it. We're absolutely not. I think Facebook events are the way people are finding out about a lot of things here. Sure. I think that sometimes if you try to keep up with the trends too much, you're leaving some things behind. I mean, how often have people said print is dead, and yet there's still print publications that people are picking up, sometimes more than ever. I mean, I think Nylon might be printing again, which is amazing. There's just many things that I think apply to other markets that don't apply here, and vice versa. But I think listening to the market, understanding where people are and how to reach them versus forcing, oh no, TikTok's how we have to do things for the future. Absolutely, we should be doing all of those things, but we shouldn't leave Facebook in the dust just because the rest of these large markets or these large amphitheaters are putting focus there.
It's such a unique market. And I think that's what makes you such a great fit for your role, is like, this market really well. You grew up here, but you've also had experience in these larger markets. So you're seeing how these larger markets are going about it. But then to do this from scratch, from literally nothing, and not only like scratch, like there's no venue, but really Huntsville didn't have that robust of a music scene here until recently, until the last like 10 years when this whole music movement kind of started in Huntsville. So you guys have gone from literally zero to, you guys were just named top amphitheater in the East Coast for Billboard.
Yeah, that was a good one. Thanks. We were when I got that email, I'll admit there was celebrations on my end for sure. That was really exciting.
That's a great one. I mean, Billboard just recognizing Huntsville, Alabama. What is it like when you're talking to people in the industry about what you do and where you're doing it? Do they know where Huntsville is, or what's their reaction to, because I know I deal with this as well, but I'm interested on the music side, like how people react when you say Huntsville, Alabama. Like, yeah, the Orion Amphitheater in Huntsville, Alabama. Are they confused, or do they know about it now? Or like, what's the response?
I think that especially now that we're in year 3, we have really kind of created a reputation for ourselves. And I think a lot of that is marketing that I can't pay for. It's word of mouth, whether it's fans or it's artists that have an excellent experience, or it's a promoter or management that's come down and we put them in a room that isn't a closet with like a piece of paper attached to it. I think that a lot of that the word has spread there. But I also think that when you talk to almost anyone with the Orion or with TVG, we all talk about it with such a like tenacity and a passion that I think it is hard to ignore that sort of thing. It's very rare to find, someone down to guest services assistants that are preaching the good word about the Orion all over. And these people don't just live in Huntsville. There are people who drive down to work here, whether they're bartenders or wherever. And I think that Huntsville, while it's winning awards itself and being on, named as, to the top of lists and things like that, I think Huntsville is really part of the conversation. And I think the Orion rounding out that more space and defense and industry side of things helps make it more of a holistic conversation.
For sure.
Versus, I just went out to Polestar conference in Los Angeles, and I was having a conversation with someone who works with Polestar, and I just mentioned our sustainability efforts, right? It's just something that I think is something amazing that the Orion does, especially in a city like Huntsville in the Southeast, and it's taking off, and we want to be a leader for all amphitheaters. And that small conversation turned into, small mention turned into, hey, there's this sustainability feature being done by venues now. I think you mentioned something about Orion sustainability, and it's like, absolutely. If we talk about these things in whatever space you have to talk about them, they will get talked about to other people. They will get the feature, they will get the focus. And that became a beautiful in-print online sustainability piece with venues now. And that's just another testament to Huntsville, MidCity, Orion creating a space to talk about things we're doing differently with tenacity that we do everything else.
We call them the soft layers of MidCity, the things that like are not necessarily what you would think that MidCity is known for, like the buildings, right? We're more than just the buildings that we're building. It's all the soft layers in between. So I feel like Orion has some really great soft layers as well, including the sustainability piece. And also one thing that we always tout the Orion about is the community events. Community events is such a big piece of what you guys do that I think is a differentiator between the Orion and other venues. So what was that like to start the the community programming around the Orion and trying to get the community to latch on and really adopt what you guys were doing there?
I think no one, especially Huntsville natives, do not talk about Huntsville without talking about some sort of community, whether it's community built off of hobbies or what they do on the weekend, or it's the community built off of work or church or whatever it is they choose. So I think the idea that the Orion could be successful without embracing community is outlandish. So with an excellent cultural and community events manager in Lena and an excellent team, it's been easy to identify the gaps in the community that we feel need to be filled, or organizations that might not have a space to do that. I think it's listening a lot more than it is coming up with the ideas. You know what I mean? Like we can brainstorm with the best of them, but I think if we're deciding that Huntsville needs something or needs a space for something, it's a lot less helpful than going out into the community and saying, who would like to host an event that they've never thought they could before, right? It might not be that we can fill 8,000 seats, but we've got all these great other spaces. The Dome, Jeff and Blues, Apollo South in general, concourses, that we can do things to elevate either existing events or things that maybe somebody never thought they could put on simply because they didn't have a partner that knew how to, put up a stage and run sound and do this, that, or the other. So community was integral in the marketing plan of, I can buy a print ad and I can run social media ads, but some of the best marketing is putting on these events that people come to and say, I've never actually been to a concert at the Orion. I just go to the yoga classes, or I just go to Cultura, or, whatever festivals there are. And having something low dollar or free, especially at an amphitheater that, these touring acts have to pay their bills as well. Those tickets can get pretty high. It's really important for us to have events of all costs and remain accessible for people who might be a music lover but might not be able to shell out money for a ticket.
Yeah, and I think, Nadia and I talk about it all the time, just the ways in which that trend of activating a music venue or a sporting arena into other things for the community is becoming a trend that we're seeing kind of spread. It's not like it's incredible to see the Huntsville community and the Orion being able to do something like that, because like you said, it's hard. Though Huntsville is growing so fast, it's hard to not go out and see someone or see your neighbor, or be in South Huntsville and feel like it's still South Huntsville 15 years ago.
Right.
Like it's very difficult. And it's like the passion that people have in Huntsville for Huntsville, the passion, the amount of conversations I have with people that work at the Orion that love the Orion. I'm like, I should work for the Orion. Let's just not do podcasts anymore. Like, let's just do the Orion. Like, and it's just one of those, it's an incredible thing. It's incredible just to see how has the conversations between people like, maybe you went to school with that grew up in Huntsville too, and you get to talk to them a little bit about the work you're doing. Maybe they're not living here in Huntsville, but they've moved off too. Are they kind of trying to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit and like, hey, maybe I should come back to Huntsville and see what the Orion's all about?
Yeah, but I would force feed them the Kool-Aid either way. I have a lot of friends who have been so kind as to come back, and I'm so proud of what we've done. They might be able to, see one of their favorite bands, but to me, they're coming to like see what we've built.
Yeah.
And I think they're pleasantly surprised all around with not only MidCity around the Orion, because this was Madison Square Mall for some of them, and before it was not really anything, before it was this amazing, growing space. And I think a lot of them have pride when they talk about the Orion, because it is something that when they say they're from Huntsville, it's part of the conversation now, right? Like, oh, you might Huntsville, it's a great place for families. It was ranked number 1, whatever. But it also has the Orion, and I saw Billy Strings there last year. It's excellent. It's like an award-winning venue. You've got to go. Here's a couple of pictures or whatever. So I think in a way they're almost also marketing for me.
Yeah,
but I've had so many friends come back and see something that even architecturally they wouldn't have thought would have been built here.
Yeah, like it almost, you couldn't have imagined that it would have worked.
No, yeah.
And like, it's also one of those things too. It's like when I see stuff that you push out for the Orion like events, and I like scroll and I'm like, oh, like, there's some big name coming somewhere, and I keep on scrolling, and then I'm like, wait a second, I think that's wait, and I'll scroll back up. I'm like, that's in my backyard. Like that's down the street. Like I could a $10 Uber and I'm there.
Right.
Like it's one of those things. It's hard to imagine, and it just gets better and better and better. And I think it's one of those things that's like we talked about it earlier about the music scene in Huntsville's really become a more of an importance. They have all these different venues kind of acting as stepping stones for artists,
right?
At different sizes, and that's something that's been in place, for 10 plus years. They've been working on behind the scenes. Like this is not something that just happened overnight. It's overnight success, 10 years in the making. And so it's one of those things. But you see just in the last 3 years, the third season of the Orion, how many concerts have I gone to? Like, oh my goodness. And it's like, it just keeps on getting more, like the bar is always set higher. And I think that's what's incredible to see with the Orion as a Huntsville native and just someone that loves Huntsville, is that once you've made that green light of like, hey, like we've made this amazing place, you're like, now that green's a yellow because we got to do better. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that it's not only a challenge, it's something that I love that I get to work through. It is daunting sometimes to finish a season and be like, wow, that was really great. All right, let's do it bigger, better next year, even though I have no idea who's coming and I don't know which community events we'll put on. And I have a budget that I have to find, that I have to work through. in January, not knowing a lot of those things. They're not in place. I have maybe an idea of how many concerts we'll have, but I don't know who's coming. And I don't know, if we've got 55 holds, how many of those will really actually come to fruition. So I think it's a challenge, but I think that the community programming aspect of it really does help us. It's not something we do as filler. It's something we do to keep people engaged as we're really working through what that concert calendar is going to look like. It's something that we do to deliver, the promise to activate that space for more than just what a lot of amphitheaters do, which is turn on the lights 30 times a year, turn them off, and sits vacant through the winter, and you're done. And that's certainly not something we wanted. It's not something I think the city had any interest in investing in. And it doesn't really work with what MidCity's doing either. I mean, the camp doesn't close, for months and months on end. There's programming all the time. So we want to continue to be the heartbeat of, Huntsville and MidCity and this area throughout the year.
Be a community amenity.
Exactly.
That's what's really cool. It's like Red Rocks, right? Red Rocks, like when there's not a concert, like people are there hanging out for yoga or festivals or whatever. And I think that's what makes the Orion really special.
Right.
Is that like you don't have to buy like a really expensive ticket to be able to enjoy it. And it's embedded in a public park that's just now, I mean, there's a third of it that's built right now, and the other 2/3 are almost done. Like it'll be done later this summer. So
we're so excited about that too. I mean, it's been so cool to to see. Okay, we have this beautiful space, and we have this. We have all these people that are interested in coming here. But think about a year from now, 2 years from now, when it's surrounded by other amazing spaces and it's part of your day. You've started your day at MidCity and you're ending your day at MidCity and you're going to stay in a hotel that night in MidCity. And, it is so easy to get to all these other great entertainment districts throughout Huntsville that you ultimately could stay here and never step foot out, but then you might come back for another concert and stay downtown, or you might come back for another concert and rent an Airbnb in 5 Points or something like that. I mean, there's so many great spaces here that I feel like we're helping tell the story of Huntsville, but we don't have to do much because it's doing a lot itself. And the people here, I think it's so fun to walk around, especially for a show that has, maybe a more interesting audience, and walk around and see all these people out on patios, eating lunch or dinner or something, or seeing like hordes of people kind of walk from the camp over to the amphitheater right before a show or whatever. It's really just fun to like host all these people because we have
it's like when Widespread Panic or like Fish comes. It's like you can tell that their community, and that's a community, right? You can tell that community is all in Huntsville. Like I see them in John Hunt Park. I see them, at Little Rosie's. I see them
they're like doing
downtown.
the Huntsville experience.
They
and
truly
I think
are.
it was crazy too. It's like the concerts with the Widespread Panic and Fish, and then the overlap. It's like the Venn diagram. Like the middle of the Venn is the Billy Strings people. And so and like I went to the Billy Strings concert, and it was one of those moments that's like I cannot believe this is happening in Huntsville. Like it was one of those. Like I've seen a variety of shows there.
And how many of those people, just out of curiosity, like what's the percentage of people that are coming to those concerts that are not from this area?
We've I believe at a show like that, especially, I think Billy Strings, Fish, Lana Del Rey,
they like
any
tour with the tour.
Big ones, they will travel. So I think sometimes it can be up to like, I think our highest was 58% of people were from at least 3 hours away, if not out of state. And so that's a really high number. We just did some like kind of fun training with our GSAs, and I had all this data to essentially say, look, sometimes we see familiar faces coming through here all the time, but you have to assume that so many of these people are coming for their first time, not only to Huntsville, but to Alabama, and that we are hosting them for hours of what could be their only day here. And they do such an excellent job of, I mean, I've heard people giving mini histories of Huntsville and Alabama to people from all over. And that's such a fun, like, way to be an ambassador, not only for Huntsville, but Alabama and what we're doing. And I think the culture that Orion creates for people who work for the Orion, kind of as you were saying earlier, is so important, because if you're proud of what you're doing and where you're working and all the great stuff we're putting out, then you're just naturally very talkative about it. And we're so excited to have all of those people kind of represent us, both when they're working and when they're just at the grocery store. And part of it too is the idea that I never wanted the Orion, and I've told a lot of people this before any parking lots were ever even built. Sometimes going to a concert is daunting, especially in a large amphitheater, and it takes a lot of planning, and sometimes it's hiring a babysitter and deciding, okay, how long is it going to take to get there, with traffic, with parking, all of this stuff. And I made a promise before I even knew I could keep it of, this will not be an amphitheater that you have to plan your day around. This should be a place where you can decide you're going to go to a show maybe the day before and say, all right, yeah, that's going to be an easy trip for me. That's going to be something that's going to be, I can, hire a babysitter. It's going to take 20 minutes from my house. I'll get an Uber, or, a carpool with a friend, or whatever it is. It's going to be something easily accessible, and it's not going to be something, because the minute you have a bad experience getting somewhere, or it takes longer, or you weren't told in advance what you could bring in, and you've brought all this stuff that you have to go back to your car and put in your car, or you didn't understand how to park, or you didn't understand the parking was free, or whatever it is, you're already starting your experience kind of negatively. And we never want that. But our GSAs help us so much in the minute you arrive on site, feeling like you know everything about that site. Hey, there's food over here. Hey, there's drinks inside. Hey, you can bring everything inside from out in Apollo South. Our turn cups, you're really helping, the environment. They're reusable, they're they're washable, all this stuff. Yeah, absolutely. The merch line's over there. Go ahead and get in. There's water refill stations. I feel like by creating this experience for people where there's not this confusion that can sometimes be daunting and lead to, potential issues, that's something huge about
the experience.
The experience. And I think
easy to get in and out. It's easy to get around the venue, and it's not, it's a very comfortable experience when you're coming to the Orion. And the idea is that we want people to come and come earlier to the city. And, you said 58% of those people are not from this area. That's feeding our restaurants. That's feeding our Ubers. That's feeding our hotels. So come in, enjoy Huntsville, enjoy MidCity, go to the camp, go to the restaurants beforehand, walk in the park, go see a show at the Orion, after show at Jeff and Blues. And we're trying to create that ecosystem.
And I think it's
Absolutely.
that live, work, and play element too, where it's like, you don't have to feel like I have to get there 2 hours before and there's nothing at the amphitheater nearby to go have food or have a drink before the show. Yeah. It's like, no, like you can come here at lunch if you want to and just hang out.
Exactly.
And like, and the venue opens up, 2 hours before the show. Well, then I'll just get there a little early. Oh, and like one of my, like, the biggest pet peeves is when you wait in line so long just to get in. And that's like when we went to the first show and I was like, I just don't know how this is going to be. Like, I don't know where I'm going to park. And, like you kind of ask all those questions in your head. You're like, I've never been here. And that sometimes that confusion can lead people to never come.
Exactly.
But when you've broken down that barrier, like the parking was easy. And the tickets were just like, seamless. I walked through that door and I was like, I already had a drink in my hand. It's like, this is amazing. Like, this is, I am here for the show and I cannot wait. And then just the experience. I think I was talking to Nadia before my first show and she's like, oh, like I would check out this bar. I would go here. I would go there. And like, we did the whole thing. I was like, okay, I know what to do now.
People always ask me like what the best seat, and like, they were like, oh, I want to go see Lana Del Rey. And where should I get a seat? And I'm like, honestly, there's no bad seat in the house. My personal favorite spot is up by the Sky Bar.
And that's where we always hang out.
That is
I
the
just
party.
hang at the very top, and you have an awesome view of the entire venue.
And the entire district. I mean, you're up there and you get to see the entire district. And I think what's cool too is like in the 3 seasons, the 3rd season now is just kicked off of the Orion, and you get to like being at shows every season, going to the top of the Sky Bar, looking out at MidCity and seeing MidCity grow as the Orion's growing
Absolutely.
is such a cool thing. And I think it's
It
going to
really is.
continue to be that way, where like you're going to have this park that's being put in place, and you're having all these different areas that are engaging and activating the district in a way that Huntsville community has never seen, and really many communities have never seen it. And
Right.
it's just it's an incredible, it's a unique thing, and it makes, I don't know, that energy that people talk about the Orion, the energy that we're talking about the Orion, makes people excited for it.
Yes, I agree. And I think that especially hosting visitors here from all over, friends from all over, I've had more people be like, "Oh, wow, I don't know, I could see myself like in Huntsville." And that's the best feeling, that you're creating something that people really want to be a part of. And we're doing that as music lovers, right? Like we made sure that there's no bad seat in the house, because we love music, and we would hate for anyone to experience what we want to go experience, the wrong way, or skimping on concessions. That just feels like, if you have ordered a drink and it's not right, then that's part of your experience, right? That's part of you watching, Stevie Nicks or something with a bad drink. That sounds like a bad time. Like we want to make sure that everyone feels like they can find something for them at the Orion. And I think that's just a amalgamation of Huntsville, right? There's something for everyone here. And so why would that not be reflected at the Orion?
Yeah. I mean, as we've talked about, the start of the third season, what are some things that you're kind of excited for as far as on the marketing end of like things you're looking forward to put, like either community events, concerts, and then also like how often are you able to get down here to go actually to a concert?
Oh, I am here often. I say now that I split time, and I truly do split time, especially during the concert season. I'm here a lot, but also it's really easy to make that drive when you're headed towards Greta Van Fleet or headed towards, whatever else. I'm trying to make sure I edit myself, because we have a lot more announcements to come, and I'm like headed towards, I haven't announced that one yet.
Yeah, can't wait. I haven't posted.
So I'm very excited. We've got a slower June and July, but what I'm kind of spinning that as is, everybody's said it gets a little hot in there, so we might as well put all of our concerts in September and October, right?
Okay.
So we're doing that for you guys.
Yes.
That's fully on us.
We've heard you, and
we've heard you,
and
we're
we've
responding.
Listened,
yes, we're responding with putting a bunch of concerts in September and October. So definitely stay tuned for some really exciting announcements. I'm very, very excited about that, but also just it feels like we have more space now to talk about a lot of the things that Nadia was referencing. We've established ourselves as a place to come be with community, but also see your favorite big artist or whatever. But I think we're also getting into the space of talking about our sustainability more. It's becoming easier to talk about as people have seen all of these things in practice. And it's not, we never want to be preachy about it. We never want to be, negative about what we're doing. We want to say, like, look how easy it is to be part of this. We're hosting a recycling drive next weekend. We're hosting junior gardening workshops. We have an artist garden in the back where we're growing our own ingredients for our cocktails and for our new brick and mortar dining option, Odette from Florence. So these things are becoming easier to talk about because we've already established ourselves in a lot of those other spaces. And I think that's really the fun part of marketing, is when you can, it feels new, right? I get to talk about Odette. I get to talk about this new Orion Hell's Lager that we're brewing with Yellowhammer that we're debuting, I think in Neil Young. So there's something new all the time, which makes my job much easier because I don't have to sort of scrounge up things to talk about this amphitheater. We're doing innovative things all the time with sustainability, with food and beverage, with hospitality. So that's something I'm particularly excited about. And then otherwise, like I said, announcing shows is my favorite thing to do because it is just so fun to see Huntsville, Alabama listed on, a tour poster, or in Rolling Stone, where it's, on rollingstone.com, where they're talking about, I think the first time I really saw it and it was exciting, was the Jack White tour. And it just said Huntsville, Alabama, big bold letters. And it was like, wow, I never really thought this would be,
Heck yeah.
that would be somewhere that I see
hometown
my hometown, and that I'm associated with that at all. So all exciting things. I'm sure that was a really great long answer. Like, okay, Olivia, aren't you excited about the Orion?
Everything.
Right. But hey, I would be a bad marketer if I said, not everything, right?
Yeah. And
right.
I think it's too, it's like when you've created this brand that the Orion now has, its third season in, and the marketing is, gets to change a little bit, but you do have that voice, and you do have that the essence of what people are expecting. And as new events, as new community things happen, as new concerts happen, though it's a new adventure, but you then step out and say, what is the Orion, and how can we best represent this event?
Right.
And that's the easy part. It's fun when you get to like try all these new things and have all these new events, but when you understand the messaging, which it seems like you got that down pat, that then it becomes easy. But I mean, it's just so much fun. I am so excited for this third season. I'm so excited for what the Orion is going to continue to do here in the Mid-City District, continue to do for Huntsville. I mean, even the Southeast. And so I appreciate you taking the last little bit to chat about the role you play at TVG Hospitality and at the Orion Amphitheater.
Absolutely. And one last thing I'll say is that while I represent marketing and I'm the marketing director, I could not do this without an excellent marketing team. I have a content manager, a marketing manager, a designer that are absolutely the best people to work with. And I am lucky to work with them every day. So thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks to my team for doing such amazing things that I get to come talk about. And thanks again.
Yeah. And we'll have all the stuff, all the links for the Orion and anything else we talked about in the episode notes. So you can find out more information there. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.